Welcome back to the programme. If you're with me before the break, you'll know that I'm with Gilad Atzmon, the musician and author and former mayor of Shiloh, David Rubin, who's in Israel today. Welcome back, gentlemen. David, everybody else seems to be pretty happy with the news that there's an accord, tenuous as it might be, with the Iranian government on uranium enrichment. There might be some relaxing of some sanctions on Iran. Everybody is happy except Benjamin Netanyahu, who has called it a historic mistake. I'm guessing is that you would be in agreement with your president, your prime minister even.
Yes, he's the prime minister of Israel, and I don't agree with him on everything, but I certainly do agree with him on this issue. And it's interesting to note that the Israeli governing coalition, you have a wide spread of opinions on many issues. You have political parties in that coalition ranging from the most conservative all the way to liberals, and what you have is almost everyone in the governing coalition is standing behind the prime minister and agrees with the prime minister that the deal that has been reached is a very, very bad deal. The statements that have been made, that the agreement will begin the halt of the Iranian nuclear program, it's just not based in reality. The fact is that
David, Iran hasn't attacked anybody in over 300 years. It's never committed an act of aggression against a neighbouring state. Why are you worried?
The question isn't what they have done 2,000 or 1,000 or 500 years ago. The question is what they have been doing since the Iranian Revolution about 30 years ago, when they overthrew the Shah, and since then they have been vowing, the Ayatollahs, the real leadership in Iran, has been vowing to destroy the state of Israel. They have been vowing.
Well, they say a lot of things, don't they, David? They say a lot of things, a lot of hot air. Much of it is meant for their own people. Let me bring Gilad in, because we've only got 10 minutes. Gilad, they've been vowing to wipe Israel off the map for years. Israelis should be worried.
To start with, this is not true. It is based on a mistranslation. And what we see here with Mr. Rubin is what I define as a pre-traumatic stress. I argue in my writing that within Jewish culture, instead of post-traumatic stress, what we are dealing is pre-traumatic stress. These people are tormented, genuinely tormented, as you can see, please don't disturb me. They are tormented by an imaginary threat. They imagine the threat,
David,
and then they produce politics that is there to prevent.
I'm going to bring you back in, and Gilad won't talk when you talk. Hang on a second.
This is exactly what we see.
Let him finish the point, and then you get 2 minutes uninterrupted. That's a promise. Go ahead.
This is exactly what I call pre-traumatic stress. They are tormented by an imaginary threat, and in fact, what they do by being tormented, they implement the strategy that actually bring destructions on themselves.
But they're there, Gilad. They're in the region. They are
in the region, and we have to remember they are in the region, and they are the only state in the region that produces hundreds of atomic bombs. And the first question that we have to ask ourselves, okay, they are in the region and they are in a conflict with a few countries in the region. How is it possible that Israel produces hundreds of atomic bombs? Is there any rational explanation for it?
Let's let
No.
David back in. David, go ahead. David has dropped out. He hasn't left us. I'm assured that we've lost the connection briefly. I'll carry on with Gilad.
He probably left.
They would argue that it's easy for us to say that Ahmadinejad was misquoted, that what Ahmadinejad meant was the redrawing of the map in the region. But they would argue it's easy for us to say that the human rights, we can talk about Israel and Palestine, but the things that go on in Iran would give them serious enough concern that if they were to develop weapons, that they would fire them against Israel, irrespective of the historical record.
To start with, it is not established at all that Iran was planning to produce weapons. Their leadership argue that they don't. in the war in Iraq. They had WMD. They were hit by WMD, and they decided not to use it. So we have a good reason to believe that they actually don't want to produce weapons. But I would say, because I believe in power of deterrence, actually I believe that the safest thing for them and for the Israelis is Iran possessing actually nuclear weapon. Because at the moment, Israel enjoy this impunity. And they are attacking and threatening not just the region, because as I said, they have hundreds of atomic bombs. They actually...
But we don't know exactly what they do have, Gilad. We know what Mordecai Vanenu said, but we don't know exactly what they have.
Actually,
let's be honest about it.
Actually, we know. We know, and there is no doubt, you know, I can assure you that not a single intelligence services around this planet doubts Israeli lethal nuclear capacity. So this is not the question. The big question
for a second here. I'm sorry to report that David Rubin is refusing to come back on. I don't know why that is. I've been speaking to David for years, and he was getting equal time with Gilad, and he would have continued to be allowed to carry on his train of thought, but he's refusing to come back on. So be it. You and I can carry on anyway. That's a bit disappointing, but there you are.
It's not disappointing. It's typical. It's typical because they have created, these people like Rubin and their Jewish lobbies, they've created a situation where you cannot really confront them unless you play within their own ground. And I broke this law. And I insist to really look into the Jewish culture and into those things that made Israel into unique.
Again, we're generalizing. We're generalizing again because there are many hundreds, many thousands of Israeli citizens who do have great issues with their government. But to be fair to David Rubin, he laid out in great detail there the way politics is done at the moment in Israel. Is so fragmented. There's so many parties. The Knesset is made up of so many parties. When was the last time we had a majority? When was the last time we had a majority?
By the way, you're totally right. You're totally right. Yet in the Israeli Knesset, in this manifold of Jewish parties, there is not a single Jewish party that is ready to acknowledge the original sin, the 1948 ethnic cleansing or the right of return of the Palestinians. So we have a lot of Jewish parties that debate amongst themselves on different issues. But when it comes to Iran, as he just mentioned, with these great democracies, they all agree and accept this belligerent approach. So Jewish democracy is not a pluralist concept, and I'm not very impressed with it. What can I say?
Well, so what's the option then? Because it doesn't look like the paradigm in Israel is going to change anytime soon. The next elections we have there, and the ones after that and the ones after that, are going to produce a whole raft of results, which means we're going to have a coalition, a rainbow coalition even, in Israel again in the future. So we have to deal with that, whether we like it or not.
And indeed, and what we have to make sure is that we call a spade a spade. We understand that Israel is driven by Jewish ideology. We have to understand that Israel power on the West is maintained by Jewish lobbies. And, you know, the Jews are entitled to have lobbies, but we have to make sure that we understand what it is. And we gather the political energy and the intellectual energy to confront those issues, to be brave enough. This is what I believe in. I'm a peaceful human being. I don't want to see us being pushed into conflict. As we know, it was again the Jewish lobby that was just trying to push us into a war in Syria, in the open, in this country.
It wasn't just the Jewish lobby. Let's be honest about it now. Honest about it, Gilad. There's a lot of people who had a vested interest in the West dropping bombs on Damascus and on Assad. Not just, it's generalizing the Jewish again. We shouldn't do that.
Sorry, this is absolutely right. But AIPAC was the most. AIPAC not involved. AIPAC were the most vocal lobby. And you're right. There are a lot of people who benefit from wars. But I think that it is very good for Jewish people if we confront their political power. They, for the first time, will have to look into this power and maybe to restrain themselves. Because what we see now, again, is kind of a form of omnipotence, and it is just because we behave like
We better leave it
impotence.
there, Gilad. Thanks for coming in. Enjoyed meeting you. Thank
Pleasure.
you. Gilad Atzmon there, who is, of course, a musician and author. And we did have David Rubin on. David was obviously annoyed with what was happening here, so he decided to disappear. I'll give him a call later on. I've known David Rubin a long time. Thanks for tuning in to the Richie Allen Show. Please do call 0203 714 270.
The world needs to change. So let's do it.